Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, the creator and host of the award-winning podcast that you're listening to right now. Thank you so much, called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. It is a daily podcast, 365 days a year, and each day we talk to an author about all of the things related to their career, their book, their life, and more in 30 minutes or less, because who has time? I am now an author myself, although I wasn't when I started this podcast, and you can get my new memoir, Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, wherever books are sold starting July 1st, and my children's book, Princess Charming. You can learn more about me at zibbyowens.com, but really you're here to learn more about the authors, and that is what we're going to do. Also, be sure to check out all the other podcasts in the Zcast Podcast Network. You can learn more at zcastnetwork.com and definitely check out those shows as well. Rabia Chaudry is the author of Fatty Fatty Boom Boom, a memoir of food, fat, and family. Rabia is an attorney, advocate, and author of the New York Times bestselling book, Adnan's Story, and executive producer of the HBO documentary series, The Case Against Adnan Syed. Rabia is also co-producer and co-host of the podcast Undisclosed, The 45th Nighty Night, and The Hidden Djinn. With over 400 million downloads, that's insanely amazing and makes me feel like a complete failure. But anyway, with over 400 million downloads, Undisclosed is the most popular wrongful conviction podcast in the world. The Undisclosed team has helped exonerate a dozen defendants and find new evidence to get nearly all their defendants back in court. Rabia is a 2021 Aspen Institute ADL Civil Society Fellow and was a 2016 Aspen Ideas Scholar and on the Vanguard Board at the Aspen Institute. She's a Fellow of the Truman National Security Project, a Fellow of the American Muslim Civic Leadership Institute, a Fellow of the Shalom Hartman Institute, and a former board member of the ACLU of Connecticut and Maryland. She's the recipient of the Truman National Security Project's 2015 Harry S. Truman Award for Communications and Media Influence and is a 2015 Carnegie Corporation Great Immigrant, and the recipient of the 2015 Healing and Hope Award by the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth. She is currently a founding board member of the Inter-Jewish Muslim Alliance and the Muslim Jewish Advisory Council, both of which focus on building Muslim-Jewish coalitions around pressing policy issues and educating across communities to break boundaries. Rabia received her Juris Doctorate from the George Mason School of Law and practiced immigration and civil rights law for over a decade before moving into the CVE policy sphere. Her practice focus was asylum and family immigration and civil rights defense of Muslim immigrants against federal law enforcement agencies. Her second book, Fatty Fatty Boom Boom, is out now. Rabia is a frequent public speaker and writer on criminal justice, civil rights, and media advocacy. Welcome, Rabia. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Fatty Fatty Boom Boom, a memoir of food, fat, and family.
Thanks for having me. I love the name of your show.
I love the name of your book. So there you go. Can you tell listeners what your book is about and why you decided to write it?
I mean, as the subtitle tells you, it's a memoir about food, fat, and family. And when after publishing my first book, I was immediately asked by my publisher and literary agent, what are you going to write next? And I started thinking about it. I had never considered writing a memoir because, frankly, I always feel like you have to do something extraordinary in your life to do that. But I was encouraged to consider it. And when I did, I thought, well, a lot of my work is public facing, the work I do in advocacy, criminal justice, and other issues. I do a lot of writing and public speaking about it. So I've told those stories a lot of times. And I decided the story that I really have never told anybody publicly is this story, which if there's one theme in my life, it is this theme of body image issues and weight struggles, which I've had since childhood. And so that's, and Fatty Fatty Boom Boom is one of my nicknames when I was a kid. So, and so that's how I decided that this, and I also figured that this is the kind of story that would resonate with a lot of people.
Certainly resonated with me. You talked about how when your family came to America, you were fed literally sticks of frozen butter to soften, to deal with your gums hurting, and you would chew on the butter. Is that right?
Yeah, I think my mom would contest the word fed.
Okay.
She was like, what is going to cool her gums, be nice and but also something she won't choke on and something she can hold, and a frozen stick of butter. I don't really know where she ever got the idea, because when I ask her about it all these years later, She's like, I don't remember, but it just made sense. And I loved it, obviously. And I have always loved butter, I think ever since.
Butter is great. Butter makes
Yeah,
everything better.
it does, they say.
And so that was your first experience sort of gaining more weight and having your family, when you would go back to visit, not be as excited that you had, they were like, what did you do to my grandchild and all of that,
Yeah.
which could not have felt good even though you were very young.
I mean, I don't have a recollection of that happening, but it's a story that I have been told a million times growing up that, when we went back at this time, I just remember feeling adored, right? Like I was like this chunky little doll that was being passed around to all my relatives and they adored on me. But my grandfather, I guess, could kind of see that this is not good. This is not going in the right direction. My grandfather was always super fit, super healthy. He died in his late 90s. And even though he'd gone blind, a decade earlier, he still went for a walk every day and took a cold shower every morning. Just a real, healthy guy.
Well, you talk about how you were in grade school and how you started hiding food, which, by the way, I did too. I would put Hershey Kisses under my bed, but we don't have to talk about that.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah. Because I had my allowance and they had the store next to my grade school. And so I could go in and I would either get a bag of Hershey Kisses because that was $1.25, or I could do a 50-cent Yodels because they often had a third Yodel. Or sometimes devil dogs were only 25 cents, so I could get a couple. But anyway, this is really dating me. Those might not be right, but that's how I remember it in my head. But anyway, you said, these were the years I learned to eat in secret, to hide my insatiable hunger, to wrap food in napkins and press it between the pages of my books, to inhale entire mouthfuls without chewing when someone suddenly entered the room. And these were also the years I realized I may have been a bit chubby because it seemed everyone had begun commenting about my weight and noticing what I ate and how much I ate. I understood that if I was going to eat the things I loved and the amounts that satiated me, I had damn better hide it.
Yeah. Writing this book for me was like connecting a lot of dots. And for the most part, I haven't spent much of my life eating in secret, but there have been definitely moments in my life. And that I think that's really where it began at that point. And then later, when I was in my first marriage and it was a deeply abusive marriage, I also started eating in secret. And, my mom's always done that. She'll never eat with us. And so it was just interesting, we pick up these, people around us model behavior and then kids pick it up. But yeah, and I would compare myself to my younger sister who was only 2 years younger than me. And I would watch how she ate and I would be like, how is she full? Like just eating like that banana and a glass of milk for a snack. And I just didn't understand what was wrong with me. Yeah. I never felt full.
Do you feel full now?
I do, but it took a surgical procedure to get me there. Yeah.
And you feel literally a physical difference,
fullness. Oh, yeah. I mean, people ask me whether I regret getting gastric sleeve surgery because frankly, gastric sleeve surgery was not a magic bullet to get to goal weight or any, it really doesn't. You have to still be on a very strict protocol, for that procedure to be effective. And I just didn't follow it. And most of the people I know who got the sleeve have gained back almost all the weight. But I don't regret it because it does give me the feeling of knowing what it's like to feel full. And most of my adult life didn't know what that felt like.
It's not the best feeling.
Actually, to me, it feels like a gift.
Oh, really?
Because it's finally a signal from my body that you can stop eating. And I never was able to do that. I would eat until the food in front of me is gone. If there's leftovers in the plate next to me from somebody else, I would eat those too. And that felt terrible because I felt like something that's not normative. That's not how other people's bodies function. So what was wrong with mine that it didn't send that signal?
Interesting.
So I feel very grateful for feeling full and satisfied. I'm like, I'm good. I can get up from this table. Yeah.
Maybe I just mean overly full, which.
Oh, stuffed and stick to my stomach. Stuffed. No, yeah. I don't want to feel that obviously, but this is a different sensation. This is just like, okay.
Satisfied.
I feel satisfied.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, you did not write in such a positive way about the sleeve situation. I feel like for anyone considering it, if they read your book, they wouldn't necessarily run and get that operation.
Look, I wanted to be real about it. You know what I mean? I also wanted to be really honest about why I got it. And I think I made the right decision based on my calculations, based on my lived experience, based on what science and research shows us about people who struggle with weight and how the odds are stacked against you for so many reasons. And there's a reason every time. And it's not like we don't know how to lose weight. You do over and over again in your life and you gain, and it comes back, with friends, like I said, over and over. So it just made sense to me in many ways. And I also thought that, I don't know my physiology. Maybe my stomach is this big gaping black hole where that is a reason I never get full. So this might be the way. But yeah, I wanted to be honest about what that first 6 months especially was like. It was very, very hard. And I was at a book event and I was talking about this, and a woman raised her hand and said, I just want you to know I'm getting gastric sleeve surgery next week. And I was like, oh no, listen, I don't mean to put you, but the truth is they will prepare you for all that. When you are going through the evaluation and kind of the whole program to prepare you, they will explain that this is all going to happen to you and you have to be mentally, emotionally prepared for it.
Hmm. Well, it's good to have the real story,
Yeah.
It's super useful. You wrote really beautifully about your marriage ending. If I could just read this one other paragraph, is that okay?
Sure.
You said, 6 months later, I was no longer with my husband. A marriage doesn't break in an instant. It takes hundreds of instances of words said and unsaid, of grief and resentment, disappointment and heartache. Our marriage didn't even have a chance to build, much less break. When AK hit me just weeks after I left my family's home to join him, he shattered any foundation our relationship could have had. You cannot build on rubble. But for 5 years, for the sake of our daughter, I had tried. Ultimately, I wasn't even the one who ended it. AK did.
Yeah. Everybody, like anybody who's been through a divorce understands that, or the end of any relationship understands that. It takes just lots of 1,000 cuts, right? Death by a million cuts or whatever. Yeah.
I'm divorced also. So
okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And I used to be a Weight Watchers leader, and I know you went to Weight Watchers for a while.
Were you really?
I really was. I know. Can you believe it? As I said, I've struggled with my weight forever, and it finally worked for me. Like when I tried it, it was like the only thing that had ever worked. And when I get really excited about something, I'm kind of like all in. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be at goal weight. Oh, if you've been at goal weight for long enough, you can be a receptionist. And I was like, well, I'll just have to try that. And then you can be a leader. And I don't know. I just kept I like having goals.
Yeah.
So I did that for a couple of years.
See, I never even gave it a chance, as you found out in the book.
I read that. Yeah.
At 15, I was like, no, I do not belong here.
No.
And I just refused. It just seemed like way too much work. And I was like, there's no way. Even at that very tender age, I was like, I know I can't live like this, where I got to figure out the point for every single thing. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. You just took the money and went to the mall, right? Didn't you do something like that?
I took the money and I went to the convenience store to get junk food. But my poor parents were like, this doesn't seem to be working months later.
And you're like, no, I feel great. And they're like, okay.
Can I ask you a question about your experience though?
Yeah.
Is that when you said it worked? I mean, to me, it's like a lot of diets. It works every diet works when you're doing it. But the minute you stop doing it, the point is it sustainable for your life, I guess, because diets aren't. Yeah.
I was able to do this through through pregnancy. I did it for 7 years.
Wow.
And it consumed me. I feel like it actually became like an eating disorder. Like all I would do was think about the points.
Oh,
so I feel like I got too obsessed about the perfection of it. But what I liked about it is that it took all the emotion out of food.
Right.
Like it was like, oh, should I have this cake or should I not? Well, whatever, it's 7 points. Do you have 7 points to spare or not? So I kind of liked that it talked to me that way because anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about myself, but
no.
It's more like emotional. Like my issue is more emotional eating. Like I get upset and then I eat for 2 weeks and, it's not about the food. Like I feel full and I just ignore it. But because it's feeding something else in me. So 100%. Weight Watchers for me just took that whole piece of my brain and just dropped it off on the side. But then I got too into it and I got really thin and it was,
oh boy.
I mean, for me, not for most people. I also feel like I weigh more. Anyway, whatever. I'll never be too thin for anyone else.
It's all complicated. Yeah, you're right. You probably, although with my mother, when I got to a certain point and I felt, and I wasn't too thin. I weighed around 165 pounds, but I was super fit because I was strength training. And this is literally just 4 or 5 years ago. My mother was like, that's it. You were getting too skinny and I think you have cancer. Do you have cancer? Are you lying to me? So sometimes, at least with my family, there is a thing such as too thin. I have to be just right. My mom used to say to me, and she still does it, listen, as a lawyer, you have to have a little meat on your bones. If you're too tiny, then you won't have the gravitas. You won't have the presence, as an attorney. I'm like, holy moly, just give me the weight range that works for you, Mom.
Oh, pleasing my mom could be like 5 podcasts in a row. No, I'm kidding. She's probably listening. But yeah, there's no, it's also different generations, I feel like, have such different takes on your body and your eating. And
different
it's hard to reconcile.
Too,
different cultures.
Right?
Yep. So it's like an unwinnable situation in a way.
Yeah.
But
unless you just do whatever you need to do and make yourself happy. That's what I learned. That's all that matters to me now.
Yeah. But also I want to be healthy too, you know?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of like all the science is like, no, like I want to live long, you know, I don't know. But then on the other hand, when you have a little extra weight, then like your cheeks look better, you know, your face looks better. So I'm like,
well, look, I'm, you know, I'll be 49 in a few months. And folks, a lot of people think that I'm younger and they're like, you know, how come, what's the skincare? I'm like, I think it's just the cheeks.
Yeah.
I think I just have a little extra fat. Really. I mean, you know, it's not a skincare routine. It's just having, you know, a little extra chub. I think it keeps you looking a little young, but yeah, healthy is important. But that is part of being happy for me now, is just moving and putting things in my body that don't make me feel terrible.
Yeah. So how did writing the book affect your relationship with food? Like, did the analysis of it change anything, or was it just, it was already in your head and you just dumped it out, so it didn't really change anything anyway?
The thing is, I could not have written the book until I had gotten to the point where my relationship with my body and food had already changed, stabilized, gotten better. I'm not saying I was at the point, or I've ever been at the point where I'm like, I love my body, but I finally was at the point where I didn't hate my body. And that took a lot of work. And it took a lot of, I mean, I'm sure just living to a certain age makes a difference. When you're over 40, 45, there is something to be said about just not caring anymore about a lot of things, what people say, things like that. So I couldn't have written until then. But what writing the book helped me do was just understand myself better and understand why I was where I was at different points in my life. And it helped me understand people in my life, my family better, as I wrote about them and tried, like with my mother eating in secret. She's in her 70s. She still won't eat with us. But if you leave food out in the morning, it'll be gone, right? She'll eat it at night, like literally at 3 a.m. And we used to think, oh, she's just so antisocial. She doesn't want to like sit and have a meal with us. And we would take it personally, me and my siblings, like we would resent her for it. And I realized I ate in secret when I had shame around it. So there's a story about her we don't know. You know, this is not about us. This is about something else. So that for that reason, I got to say, like, it was a learning experience for me, right? You know, at the end of the book, and I remember when I finished and my eldest is 25. So there have been plenty of times that as I was writing the book and I was saying, you know, my family did this or my mother did or whatever, I was like, oh, wait, I think I've done that too with my daughter. Yeah. So by the time I got done, I decided I'm never bringing these issues up again with her. You know, everybody has to have their own journey.
It just, no matter how right you play it with your own kids. So I feel I have 4 kids. It's like the messages they get from their peers are so much more important. I'm like, wait, what did I do wrong that you feel like that? She's like, this has nothing to do with you. Do you know what I mean? Like it, sometimes it doesn't come from the home. It's like,
yeah, no, that's for sure. I know that's true. And I have a 14-year-old as well. And there was a number of years where, and this is when she was around 11, 12 years old. She's very like kind of slender, build naturally, but she kind of stopped eating. Like we would watch her, me and my husband, and we'd say, what are you doing? She would have like little smidges of food on her plate and say, I'm not hungry. And we realized she was like, it was social media, it was friends, it was other people who were like, you know, we want to be super thin. And this was around the time that I discovered strength training and began strength training.
Yep.
And as she watched me do this, and not only did it change my body, my emotional state, my mental health, everything. And I felt incredible in my 40s, feeling so strong, doing things I never thought my body could do. She was like, Mama, I want to go to the gym with you. And so as soon as she got old enough, I started taking her. And when she started lifting weights, she started eating. I mean, really eating. And, you know, now she runs cross country and she eats like an athlete, which is good food, but a lot of food, you know, a lot of calories. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Like that I didn't even have to tell her. She just saw this happen. And she, you know, I modeled it for her.
Wow. So do you have memoirs by other authors that you love or that you hope to make your book like, or that, you know?
Well, I mean, I read a number of memoirs, food memoirs, and one, like a couple of weight related memoirs before I started writing this. And I realized none of these, I mean, obviously there are times when certain stories you're like, okay, I get that. But none of them resonated with me in terms of like, oh, this is just like how I felt at the time. Like Roxane Gay's Hunger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a really deeply, her experience was incredibly traumatic. And as a child, and I didn't have that, frankly. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, my parents, but for me, like the story that resonated for me was My Big Fat Greek Wedding. When I watched that film, I'm like, oh, that's my family. They're loving, but they just are going about their concern the wrong way. But I love memoirs. I just started reading this one last night.
Oh my gosh, my favorite book. It's literally my favorite book of the whole year. A Place Called Home, David Ambroz.
I won't take that personally, but
I'm sorry. I loved your book too, but this book is like,
David and I shared a panel in Boston. And then, he signed a book for me. I signed a book for him. And then we've just become friends since. And my book tour just ended 2 days ago. So I didn't have time to start reading it. And last night, like at 1 a.m., I cracked it and I couldn't put it down.
That's how I felt.
He's a beautiful writer, but his story is just heartbreaking, shattering.
Yes.
And I'm going to get through it probably pretty quickly. And then I'm going to reach out to him. I don't even know if I'm going to have the words to process the emotions and convey how incredibly... and he's an incredible human being. I mean, he's so accomplished and so kind and positive. Anyway.
No, I'm so glad you said that because I read it over Thanksgiving and I haven't like talked to anybody who's been reading it yet, like just on Instagram. So anyway.
And he's a beautiful writer. The writing is incredible.
I know. I read it in one day. I just my family was like, hello, you want to hang out with us? And I was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really great. I loved your book too. I promise. Thank you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on this podcast, and I wouldn't have read the whole thing, which I did. So, do you have any advice for aspiring memoirists?
Most people, I know a lot of people want to write memoirs, and for almost every single one, the thing that stops them is they have family who are living that they wouldn't want, them to read it. That's true for me as well, but I'm lucky. Number one, most of my family doesn't read. They really just don't read. They're not readers. I am the only real reader in my family. And my dad would have read it, but he had a stroke, really severe stroke, and he's not capable of reading anymore. So that helps me. But also, I could have been much more, I was kind to a lot of people in the book. I mean, because I wanted to talk about our relationship when it came to this specific issue, not about them as whole human beings, right? I'm not there to expose their lives and you know what I mean? All these things. And so I think there's a way to do this right. Like you shouldn't have to wait for everybody, to die off to write a memoir. And the other thing that people usually have a concern about is verifying the facts, right? But it's kind of like what you said that earlier. I don't remember what memory you're talking about. You're like, that's how I remember. Oh, the food. What matters is how we remember it, right? I mean, like there are stories in the book in which there are lots of other family members there, but I'm not going to check in with them and say, how do you remember it? Because what matters is how I remember it. And that's my story. And so don't let those things hold you back from just sitting down and starting and putting pen to paper. And it's just powerful for you to kind of learn who you are. I mean, I feel like I solved a little mystery of myself by the time I was done writing the book.
That's great. That's the best line. Because, I mean, it's like the greatest feeling to sort through stuff. And anyway, that's wonderful. I wrote a memoir too, actually.
Oh, you did? Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, but I put that in the beginning. I was like, I don't know. This is just how I remember it. But, I don't know what I did yesterday. So,
right.
But, I hope
that's
this
all that
is
matters. That's your reality.
Approximation of the truth.
Right.
No, it's not that far off, but who knows? I mean, I feel very confident that I remember it the way it happened, but maybe I'm wrong. But anyway. Okay. Well, congratulations on Fatty Fatty Boom Boom. And I love chatting with you about food and family and all the good stuff. And I feel like I could have this conversation for a million years. So I couldn't wait to talk to you about it.
Thank you so much, Zibby. Thank you. And I know we've had some scheduling difficulties, so I appreciate your patience with all
No worries. This worked out even better for me too. So
okay,
all
great.
Good.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.